So on our show today, it's another episode, a joint episode with Legacy Life Podcast, with Ryan and Caleb. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about legacy today.
Yeah.
Last one, it was so fun. You guys got to interview me on my own show, which was really fun. This time around, we're going to be talking a little bit more in legacy. And you guys are going to kind of more run the questions and we'll answer. Although I'm not promised I'm not going to fire some questions back at you.
Yeah.
And this time around. So
Bring it on.
Let's just jump in.
Awesome. Yeah. So talking about the topic of legacy today. So why is it, I mean, what do you think are some of the big misconceptions when it comes to, we talk about the planning process with people a lot and getting their financial plans in place, their retirement in place. When it comes to like what I call the baton handoff, when it comes to the wealth transfer part of the plan, the end of life, the next generation inheriting assets, why does it seem like when these conversations that people can be all over the map when it comes to this? What's going on there? Some of the misconceptions with legacy.
Wait, misconceptions are all over the map?
All over the map first.
Okay, so everybody's just wired so differently. You know, when we were first creating Simplicity, we had, you know, the retirement rate, which is like, you know, what's the minimum rate of return that can get you to a specific age and run you out of money? You know, like if I'm planning on living to 100 years old, what do I need to average to make sure I can at least last to 100 years old? Well, then after that, you know, we're like, well, people don't want to run out of money. A lot of people want to preserve their assets. So we came up with this preservation rate. You know, what's the rate of return? Like if I'm starting with $1 million, I want to live my life. How do I end with $1 million so I can give, you know, X amount of dollars away to my kids? Well, then there's that other train of thought, which is, what if I want to give away more than I have right now? What if I want to enjoy my life, grow my assets, and give away more? And everybody's different. You know, it's funny at the beginning when we just did the retirement rate, we're like, well, what about those preservers and the ones that care about legacy? And I'm like, at first I thought everybody was going to gravitate towards that legacy. I got people coming like, I don't care about my legacy. My kids are fine. You know, I've spent so much money on them. They get another dime. And other people like, they make more than I do, you know, and you know, I'm going to give my money away to this organization because my kids don't even want my money, you know, or people are like, oh, my kids need it, but I don't care. I put in my time. You know, now my wife and I are going to enjoy whatever. I mean, people are people.
Yeah.
And we're all made different. We're all wired different. You know, to each his own. It's our job to cater to them.
Right.
And to bring wherever their priorities are right back to them. Cause, you know, I'll never forget the first time I had an interaction like this about beneficiaries and legacy with a client. I'm sitting in a meeting early in my career. I was about 5 years in, and I'm at that small firm up in Michigan, in Plymouth, Michigan, and I'm filling out paperwork, an annuity application for a client. And there's there's four of us, there's a table, we're all sitting at it, and I'm sitting across from the guy, and then the other advisor sitting here across from the wife. And I'm filling out the guys, I'm filling out the guys, and I'm putting beneficiary information in, and I'm writing it down, and I'm putting his wife, who's sitting right next to him, and he goes, and I'm not going to say it the way he said it, but he goes, "What the F are you doing?" And I was like I froze. What do you mean? And he goes, "What the F are you?" And he's like strong demeanor, and I was like, "I'm putting your wife down as your beneficiary." He goes, "Who told you to do that?" And I was like sweating. And the other advisor just sat there. I'm like, he's a seasoned guy. I'm like, say something. And the guy's like, I'm not putting her down as my beneficiary. She's not getting any of my money. She's sitting right next to him. And that mortified me.
Yeah.
But and she was totally comfortable with it. They had an arrangement. And what his was his and what hers was hers. And I never made that mistake again. So in meetings now, it's like, where are you guys at? You know, how, when we get to this legacy conversation, everybody's wired different. I would never condone that.
Yeah.
Like what is mine is my wife's. What is my wife's is mine. We are together and everything. But I know some very good, godly people that don't see things that way.
Yeah.
If that's what you're comfortable with, that's what you're comfortable with. It doesn't matter what I think. It matters what they believe. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, it's a two-part thing. You know, you two, right?
Yeah.
It's a difficult conversation. Hey, I'm about ready to leave.
Yeah.
let's talk about that. And the younger people typically don't want to talk to the older people. But I got a funny story. I had a client came in, or it wasn't a client. He came in to interview me because he was going to leave his money to his daughter and 2 granddaughters. And I said, but you have no beneficiaries. You have nothing designated for that. He goes, let them figure it out. That'll be fun. I'm like, that's not going to be fun. That's going to be, because he had IRAs, he had non-IRAs.
That'd be awful.
He had cost bases. We had, he didn't have any trusts. And he goes, let them figure it out. Well, after a little bit of talk, I finally talked him into a trust. So, because he didn't want the government to gain more taxes on his non-IRA stuff. But sure enough, he told his daughter, you come to see me, Kevin, when you're gone. And she came in and everything was in disarray. I mean, disarray. Beneficiaries on this one, not on this one. So probate came into play.
Sure.
And she was crying.
Yeah.
Don't do that to your people.
Yeah.
Don't go down that road. And it took us, meaning me and the client, 6 to 8 months to unravel all of this stuff.
Sure.
And try to determine what he really wanted. He told his daughter he wanted his granddaughters to get something, his grandson to get something, and she to get something, but he left nothing in writing to that. So it was all interpretation. She was just a wreck. And I'm telling you right now, it took 5 years off her life just going through that experience. Don't do that.
My father and I, we talk often about that with each other, just in conversation. We've talked about it on previous episodes where, like, even in our situation, he's very open about the fact, he's like, look, we need to have this conversation. Like, we're going to sit down with the family, have a meeting. Like, we need to have a conversation about how things are going to go, if something happened to your mom and I. And he's very intentional about that. And we are very strongly encouraging that you should do that for yourselves as well. Cause what was the story? You said you had seen somebody go through probate. You would talk to somebody that had been going through probate for 20 years or something like that.
Oh gosh. That's an outlier. But yeah, I had, a client who, her husband passed away and we had done some life insurance planning with them, but he owned all this property, but in different counties and in different parts of the state. She was in 2 or 3 different probate courts to try to settle everything that wasn't in trust. Yeah. So it can be a nightmare, like you said, if you don't set things up properly. But yeah, and I had the situation with my very first client I ever had, my very first one in the business. Her husband had passed away when he was 40 years of age, and she was just turning 65 when I met her. She was going on Medicare for the first time. And something with the company, from what I remember, they had canceled a life insurance policy on him when he got sick that was meant to go to her as a benefit. And so she sued, and it took years and years and years for her to get the settlement out of that. And when I met her, it's kind of a strange thing. She had just gotten the settlement. I just met her, and she opens this drawer, pulls out this check and says, can you help me invest this? I've just got this. What a way to start my career, right?
Yeah.
The first house I ever went in, and that was the story. And so right out of the gate, you're learning that, man, that kind of planning is so important and can really create either ease of transfer and peace of mind for family, or it can be really a big ordeal.
Yeah.
And on the other spectrum, I just lost my dad a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And of course, me being an advisor, I took care of everything. There was no probate.
Yeah.
Everything was clean. My brother and I, there was no issues.
Yeah.
It can be from one extreme
Yeah.
to the other extreme.
Yeah.
And it's just as simple as sitting down, doing the planning, preempting this stuff and having the conversation.
Yeah.
It's not that difficult, but some people want to make it difficult. And that gentleman I was talking about was well over 7 figures.
Yeah.
10 different accounts.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Jeez.
Yeah. Wow.
So how would you, so somebody my age, because I'm obviously the younger one in the room here, but how would you, for me at least, I've tried to, encourage people my age, like my peers, to, look at where they're at financially and then where they want to go, or at least because I know there's so much life ahead of us. It's easy to just be like, I'll figure it out when I get there, because I don't know what's going to happen, and you don't know what's going to happen, but at least put yourself in the right direction. And then also talk with your parents about what their plan is and things like that. And even yesterday we were doing the simplicity role playing and going through, and we put my information in and just looked at my simplicity plan, and there's so much that could happen from now on, but they're like, all right, here's what it looks like right now, you know? And I was like, oh, that gives me a really good picture. Like if I keep doing this, this is what's going to happen. Right. And so as somebody younger, if I'm speaking to somebody in my generation, how would you say, you know, how do I go about that conversation and like encouraging them? Like what would I say to make it poignant or important to them to like grasp their attention and help them understand the weight and the levity
Kind
of
of
the
values.
conversation,
Yeah.
the value of the conversation?
Mhm.
This is a tough conversation to have because it's not necessarily our job to change their mind on
Right.
how they feel.
Mhm.
It's our job to inspire them to take action on how they feel. So, you know, if you're that client that is like, it'll be fun, let them figure it out, and you take 5 years off of their life, he doesn't understand, you know, how hard that is. He might not have ever gone through that. It's our job to tell some stories, to bring some perspective around every type of situation, you know, where you have the clean ones and you have the messy ones.
Yeah.
And if somebody doesn't have their life in order, tell them a story or two, give them perspective around different things. I would say bring it up.
Mhm.
Like sometimes all you have to do is talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the clients are like, oh, yeah. Or ask them about, I can tell you countless stories where I've gotten into very fun and sometimes colorful conversations around beneficiaries. And clients are like, oh, I know what this is and I know what that is. I'm like, do you? Bring your statement in next time. Tell me what you think it is right now. And then let's see how accurate you are and how many of those clients were wrong. You know, these are people that, you know, are very detailed, but sometimes you set your beneficiaries when you're your age, and then they come in and they're talking to me when they're his age, and there's like, you know, decades in between, and they're like, oh yeah, I know exactly what it is. They never looked at it in decades, and then they look at it like, oh my gosh. I mean, in one story, somebody was like, you know, I'm retiring in a year, and I'm in this class environment, and I'm asking him. He's like, I know exactly who my beneficiary is. And then he comes in to meet with me, and he's like, I was wrong. And his wife like punches him in the shoulder and is like, tell him how you're wrong. They've been married 35 years. And when he worked for the company, they weren't married. And he said his parents, his mom is beneficiary. Mom had long since passed. They've been married 35 years. He never looked at it again. His mom was still his beneficiary his entire career. He's 1 year away from retirement. His wife never made it as beneficiary on his 401k.
And so all those years, the risk that he was taking, thinking
Had no idea.
was one way and not,
Super analytical, very, very detailed individual. Had no
just
idea.
one that escaped his view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, just sometimes just ask and get them to play a game against themselves. Like, don't try to prove them. Just teach them. Ask the question.
I can live up. You were asking, how do you get people your age encouraged? Well, I had a client come in about 18, 19 years old. I know you're a little bit older than that, but he said, can I bring my son in? I said, sure. You know, we start the planning process early. And, you know, his son's not connecting. I can see it. He's not connecting. You know, you start saving, you know, you'll get some money in this. And I said to my client, I said, can I show your son how much you've accumulated? Now, at this time, he's about 55, 56, had well over $1 million. And he looked at me, he goes, what do you mean? I goes, can I show him what you have? He goes, yeah. So we sit down and we pulled up the plan, and the son's going, you know, a little over $2 million. That set his son on fire. Now, this was probably 6 or 7 years ago. And every year now he's working. He maxes out his 401k. And then plus he puts money aside in a non-IRA with me. He's on fire. He can't wait because he's going to be dad at 55, which he's well on the way to do that, right? So there was one way that I think that, you know, if you can get into the planning process and show them your plan, for example. And then another one is my goddaughter. Her name is Stephanie. And when she first was born, I just took out a mutual fund at the time, and I think it was $500 we put in it. And then I told the parents, for every time that you're putting money into it, you know, for birthdays and stuff, you have extra money, just throw it in this fund. Well, I think she was about 8 or 9 years old. She got interested in this because I go over her statements and these kind of things. She called me up and say, Uncle Kevin, what do you think about buying Pepsi? I'll remember that call at 8, 9, 10 years old. So getting them, used to it at a younger age, that's a lot of fun. Now, my nephew, on the other hand, he could care less. Did the same thing for him. So it doesn't work for everybody, but it is fun to get them going. But for you, I would say, show them your plan, show them what it can do. And then, maybe inspire them that way. You were talking about, inspiring them.
If you showed them your plan, they'd be like, oh my goodness.
We talked about that at breakfast today, like next family meeting, we're putting your plan.
We're just putting it up on the TV, letting the jaws drop.
Yeah, they will. I mean, it's the power of smart investing over time is crazy.
Yep. Because his sisters are doing the same thing too. So that's.
Yeah, we were like, should we put Kira's up? And then we were like, she might not want
She might not like that.
But then when she sees mine, she might be like, let's put mine up there.
Yeah. That's what'll happen.
That's the thing. Once you show your plan, they see the possibilities and they're like, can you do mine? And then, you get that inspiration going and that fire going.
Well, actually, it's so funny you guys are talking about this. Last week we had open house for the new office.
Yep.
And we were interviewing some clients in the space, just to ask them a bunch of different questions, to take advantage of having so many people around. And not often, we wasn't on our podcast. It was more interview. We're not even sure how we're going to use it. We're asking all these different types of questions. And we asked this one question, this one client, something along the lines of like, how has simplicity changed your life? And she was like, oh, it's changed it a ton. And I was like, wonder what she's going to say. And I was like, well, how? And she goes, well, we're kind of that hub. We're the people that all of our friends and family in our circle, they just ask us about all the financial questions. And I was like, oh. And she goes, well, before simplicity, we just educated on what we knew about investments and strategy and planning. And all we got was the glaze over. This is what she did, the glaze over. And I'm like, what's that? She goes, you know what that is. You went to school. When some boring person, starts talking and you're just like, they know what they're talking about, but they're not doing a good job explaining it. And and she's like, it's the glaze over. She goes, once we got simplicity, she goes, everything became visual. She goes, all these charts and tables and all these numbers. And, we have all this information and it tells such a great story. Now we don't get the glaze over anymore. And it just hit me. I'm like, I never would have thought that our clients would be teaching what we teach them to others. Yeah. I thought this was going to be a tool to help us explain a client situation. But now we're talking about show them your plan.
Right.
Yeah.
It's happening. Like
that's multiplication.
It's the next generation or the next phase of client or community.
Yeah.
It's creating that because people are showing their stuff to others to help educate them. And I never thought for a minute that would have ever happened. And it's happening all over.
Yeah.
So exciting.
And it's meant to be that way.
Yeah.
It never wasn't meant to be that way, but it's happening.
I mean, like in general, when there's something of great value that is, seed that is scattered, it can't help but grow and produce more of its kind. Right. And so, but we, like you said, but sometimes we're just not aware of what's being scattered.
But that's legacy.
And exactly. Yeah. And then suddenly there's this sprout that comes out and you're like, oh, hey, where'd that come from?
I know.
Right? Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
That makes me so excited.
That's fun. That's the fun part of it.
It is. Yeah.
Because then you realize you're reaching more people than you ever thought you were and helping more people than you ever thought through like you. Right.
Yeah.
So you can go out there and spread that word and have fun. And because you can relate to people your age, not necessarily my age, or your dad's age or Paul's age. He's even getting old. So
not there yet. I'm not his age,
but you can relate to them, and they can relate to you, and so you're on kind of the same playing field.
Yeah.
So if you show them, hey, I'm going to retire when I'm 40 or whatever it is, you'll get them enthused too. It's just a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. You always say, this always sticks to me when you say it, but why? He always says, why would I not be mindful of my children's children's children by the actions I take today? It's and that even goes to not even your great grandchildren or offspring, but you making simplicity has now affected your clients who are now using it to educate other people who might potentially use it to educate other people. that
To
you
your
may
generation.
never meet, and they may never meet you or even know who you are, but you're changing lives because of an action you took, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Thought about it like that.
legacy.
Get me emotional. Stop.
Well,
New topic.
Yeah, well, and what he's bringing up is that there was a pastor that once said, he said, about 5 generations from now, he said, I did the math. And I said, I should probably have this many descendants 5 generations from now. And he said, why can't they be on my prayer list?
Oh, wow.
And it hit me right in the chest. I'm like, wow, it's so convicting. I was like, right. What I do today is a legacy that they're going to carry on if I do it right, because that seed, it's incorruptible. It will be handed down. And so it just made me think about even what we do here. Everything we do matters. And so,
Totally agree with that.
yeah, that's part of your legacy. And so, I know it hit my heart too. It's like,
I know.
it's hitting yours.
New topic.
Yeah.
I don't want to cry on the show.
Yeah. Right. No crying. There's no crying in podcasts.
I have cried on my podcast.
Yeah. So seeing our face in the future is really important, I think, too. So did you say you had some questions?
I was struck earlier on this show specifically about just watching you guys. And I was thinking, like, how do we help our clients or, people in our life? I don't know what you call it, like not the Vulcan, what did you call it? The Vulcan mind meld or whatever.
Vulcan mind meld.
How do you inspire people to pour into other people? Because we're talking about legacy. We're talking about impacting people beyond ourselves. So how do you inspire that? Like how would you're obviously pouring into Caleb over here.
Yeah.
And bringing him up. He's obviously a very bright and intelligent young man. How do you do that? And what advice would you give to others? And anybody can answer this on how do we inspire people to do that with purpose?
Well, I think first and foremost, you as an individual have got to be clear on what you're about. Be clear on your purpose. And be intentional then about being consistent in living that out. That in itself is inspiring. It doesn't mean someone's going to copy and do exactly what you do, but I think it gives them permission then to discover what it is in them that I want to be that excited about when I get up, So I think it really starts with me being clear and being intentional and being consistent every day doing the things that are important. And I'm a big believer then that can't help but produce more life in other places.
Well, you're leading by example. A little bit, I met you a couple of years ago, but you just recently, you're leading by example and you're following the example. I can see it just a little bit, that we've been here. Mm-hmm. So when you see it, right, correct me if I'm wrong, you see it, you're like, want to emulate it because you look up to your dad.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I'd say, like, if somebody doesn't get it, like, it's a vision issue. Like their focus is either on themselves. We lived in a very self-focused like culture. And so if there's something you can do or say that can potentially inspire them to maybe like look up a little bit and like look out a little bit, it can start that process of inspiring people to like operate in community and come alongside others and help them and take what they've learned and pass the baton or, things like that. But it's a vision issue, not even necessarily like a character heart issue. It's just our natural bend is just to focus on ourselves.
And that statement you made, Ryan, about why can't I pray for future generations? Never occurred to me, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that inspired me. It really did. Why isn't everybody doing that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it really, that's just an example of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's been a fun show.
It has
been fun.
Paul, thanks for letting us use your studio to do this
no
for our
problem.
show and coming on. Kevin, thanks for being with us.
And don't forget to subscribe to either show.
Yeah.
To both shows.
Yes.
I hope you enjoyed everything we got to talk about today. It's always fun chatting with friends.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed
The
show
fun
myself.
part here is we're three Michigangsters here.
That's right.
I married a Mrs. Michiganster.
I'm a Michigangster. And you're a former Michigangster, right?
Well, I still root for U of M for sure.
There you go. There
Well,
you
that's
go.
good.
He's one of us then.
Yeah.
I am definitely with you.
Just four Michigangsters
We'll
having a
adopt you into my
conversation.
tribe.
God bless. Hope you enjoyed the show.